So, with me today is Dr. Atul Gupta, who is not only our Medical Director of Infection Prevention, but also is the chair of our Antibiotic Stewardship Program. And also Dr. Mike DeMaertelaere, who is a member of the Antibiotic Stewardship Committee and a family physician at the Hedges Clinic in Frankfort, Illinois. Dr. DeMaertelaere is also the chair of our Medical Education Committee. Thank you both for your leadership and your many, many contributions to Silver Cross. I know that both of you are concerned about the use of antibiotics, which is what we're going to be talking about today because it's National Antibiotic Awareness Week. So Dr. Gupta, let's start with you. Why is there a national week?
Well, so the main purpose of Antibiotic Awareness Week is just to get both clinicians and patients to be more aware of the appropriate and inappropriate uses of antibiotics. And the real point of it is to make sure that we are all using antibiotics appropriately, both from a prescribing standpoint and from a patient standpoint, in order to really preserve these antibiotics so that they're available for use for these infections in the future. We don't want to overuse antibiotics now and not be able to use them in the future. A secondary point is to reduce the side effects from antibiotics from inappropriate or overuse.
Interesting. And what are we doing specifically here at Silver Cross on the committee that you chair?
We have a great multidisciplinary committee. Dr. DeMaertelaere is a key component of that, especially with his expertise on the outpatient side. But we include pharmacy, laboratory, nursing. We have a whole range of really highly involved people from different departments in the hospital to evaluate the use of antibiotics to make sure we're using them appropriately. There are in the lab, they're reviewing resistance patterns to make sure we're not seeing too many resistant bacteria. And pharmacy does a really good job of monitoring the appropriate use, making sure the antibiotics we're giving match up with the infections that we're treating. And then from a clinical side, to make sure that message gets out to the staff in the hospital and also the medical staff.
So you're basically saying if we use antibiotics too much, the drug becomes ineffective.
That's the real danger, is as these bacteria become exposed to the antibiotics, they become resistant over time. It's not that a person will become resistant to antibiotics, but the bacteria themselves, over time, the antibiotics won't work for them anymore.
So I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. And the development of new antibiotics is not keeping up all the time with the pace of resistance. So we really have to be proactive in making sure that we're using the antibiotics in a way that's responsible so we can keep using them for the future.
Got it. So now we're in the middle of a pandemic. Are antibiotics being used for COVID-19 patients? Do they need to be on antibiotics?
For the most part, COVID-19, as you know, is a viral infection. Antibiotics don't treat viruses. We do have one antiviral that's available that we use for certain patients for COVID-19, but the vast majority of patients with COVID-19 do not require antibiotics. There are a very small subset of severely ill hospitalized patients with COVID-19 where we sometimes use antibiotics if they develop a bacterial superinfection. But 99% of COVID patients will never need an antibiotic.
Okay. And you mentioned that Dr. DeMaertelaere is active in the outpatient setting at Hedges Clinic. And what are you seeing in the outpatient setting in terms of the use of antibiotics?
In the outpatient setting, so many of the things that we see, sinus irritation, coughs, congestion, most of these things are viral, at least in the beginning. But we've gotten in the habit over many years to get a prescription when we go to the doctor, to get the antibiotic, to knock it out. Sometimes patients feel inappropriately that they could catch it early and not get sick if they catch it right away. And so what we really try to do is encourage them to realize that these viral infections don't need antibiotics, and in fact, the antibiotics can actually hurt them. They can get overgrowth infections in their GI tract that can cause diarrhea. They can get other complications associated with them. Some of these have heart complications, tendon complications. So in the outpatient setting, we really try to make sure that they realize that if they don't have strep or they don't have whooping cough or a urine infection where we know antibiotics will help, that we really try to use more supportive care, rest, fluids, maybe Tylenol and Motrin for some of the symptoms, the aches or the pains, vitamin C, getting enough sleep. Try to get those measures first so that we don't get in that habit of thinking every time I have a cough, I've got to be on a medication, because sooner or later, they're not going to be available for us.
Wow. You know, that's a really important public message, because as a mom, when my son, raising my son, whenever he had an earache, the first thing I did was call the doctor for antibiotics. Is that not appropriate?
No, it's always appropriate to call the doctor to check. And for ear infections, they kind of rate as sometimes helpful. So it's up to the doctor to kind of see if it's a type of infection that would need that antibiotic. And the same holds true for sinuses. There's not clear evidence that sinus infections all need to be treated with antibiotics. And there's really good evidence that bronchitis doesn't need antibiotics at all. So really, it's the strep, whooping cough, and the urine infections that we know need antibiotics, and then a lot of different types of pneumonia will need antibiotics. But many of the things that we have in the office fall into that virus category, and they can be treated more conservatively.
Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I thought I heard you say that it's a myth to think you can go on antibiotics to prevent illness. Is that true?
That is a myth. You cannot nip it in the bud. You cannot make the infection not get bad by starting the medicine before you're very sick.
Okay. And you did start to talk about some of the side effects of overuse of antibiotics. What are you seeing in the outpatient setting?
Most of it is stomach. Most of it's GI related. Most people get irritations of the stomach, whether it's nausea, whether it's loose stool. But there can be some infections for some of the more broad spectrum, or what we would sometimes layly say like stronger antibiotics, where tendons can break down and you can injure your tendons. There's some that have complications with the heart. So you really only want to use the drug when it's appropriate for the right duration of time.
Right.
And there's also the risk of C. diff,
Yes.
which is a big risk. There's an infection you can get in the stomach actually from being on antibiotics. The antibiotics will kill all the healthy bacteria in the gut, and this bad bacteria has a chance to grow and cause severe diarrhea and can be very dangerous.
Which is also very contagious.
Absolutely.
And we all know about hand washing with soap if a patient has C. diff.
That's
so
right. Yeah.
you've trained us well. You've trained us well. Well, we're very lucky to have both of you on this committee and for your leadership. Any closing comments that you want to make during this National Awareness Week?
Oh, I think, the main thing is this: follow your doctor's advice. When you call the physician, don't have the expectation right away that you have to be put on something. Let the doctor do their job. Let them use their diagnostic skills to figure out whether or not that medicine is needed. And if it's appropriate, they're still going to give you the antibiotic. But if not, you want to make sure that you don't pressure them, because realize that there are consequences and side effects if it's used inappropriately.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would echo that. I think it's important. The doctor is the best one to judge whether antibiotics are appropriate. And if you are prescribed antibiotics, make sure to take them till they're gone. And really, I think one thing we don't talk about enough, I know you guys do it in the outpatient setting, prevention. Keep yourself healthy, wash your hands, avoid people that are sick. It's better to avoid an infection in the first place than to need to treat it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you both.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.